Namaste, everyone. I thought we'll have this session where we can discuss some of our experiences with Sannyasrama and even with Pujya Swamiji. So, without further ado, I thought I'll just get into the thing. So, Swamiji, would you like to give an introduction about maybe your Purvashrama, just so we have more idea?
Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. My Purvashrama, in terms of academic training, perhaps I can say that I was trained as a psychologist, and I was a very high achiever and a very high performer, and I had three professional roles. One, I was heading an organization in India. We were working with street children, and this was impacting the lives of more than 15,000 children every year, providing with education, healthcare, family support. The other professional role that I held was that of being a judge of this, what is called the Juvenile Justice Board. So this is a judicial body that looks at rehabilitation for child offenders. And the third professional role I held was to teach psychology and therapy at university to master's students. And through all of this, the one thing that I continued to pursue was Vedanta. So it was in my early 20s that I got exposed to Swami Brahmaprajnananda, who is a student of Swamiji, Pujya Swamiji. Swami Brahmaprajnananda was from the 1976 batch, Chandipani, and then he went on to study in Rishikesh. So I was very fortunate to have met him and subsequently met Pujya Swamiji. So through all of these professional roles, I kept that going. And because I worked with street children, I was called Mummy and Didi very early on in life. So I had no desire, personal desire, to become a mother after that. And it's been a pretty smooth life filled with a lot of grace, a lot of Ishvara Anugraha.
Swamiji, what were the circumstances under which you met Swami Brahmavedanta ji?
Yes, this is very interesting. I was, as a part of my psychology training, we were learning to refine our skills in taking workshops, being able to reach out to a larger community. And as a part of that, I was expected to critique different kinds of workshops. So I walked into one which was being held by him, and he was talking about handling fears and insecurities. Around the same time, I was getting very disillusioned with Western psychology because I had a year or two of practice. My clients were doing well. I was beginning to get quite bored. And, where psychology talks about management of the problem, what he said about Abhayam really stuck with me. And soon after the workshop, I went to meet him and told him that I would love to come for any class or any such that you are conducting. And then onwards, I started attending classes.
I see. In a few of Pujya Swamiji's talks, I see that he has a deep understanding of psychology and human behavior.
Yes.
So, did you find any, as you said, Western psychology has its limitations. So,
Yes.
and Pujya Swamiji addresses the core issue as opposed to addressing the symptoms. Is that my correct reading of it?
Absolutely, absolutely. So really speaking, where Western psychology ends, Vedanta begins. And I really felt like I had come home because, managing the mind on a relative level was not a big deal. That was already done pretty much, in my early 20s. And then there was just so much more that Vedanta had to offer.
I see. And this was the first exposure that you had to Vedanta, or was your family already somewhat involved into this from childhood?
Strangely enough, I wanted to become a Christian. Okay. So this was, I think, in my teenage years. I never really grew out of my teenage angst, I think. I read a lot of read a lot of books. I think kind of similar to your background, Prashant. In my early teenage years, the only difference being that because I studied in a convent school and I was very inspired by some of the nuns there. So I started to read the Bible and I prayed and prayed that Jesus would come and save me. And he did come and save me through my grandfather, because I had a chat with my grandfather. I couldn't speak about all this to anybody else because my family is not particularly religious. It's only later on that my father became a bit more religious. So since I couldn't talk about all these things to anybody at home, I spoke to my grandfather and told him that I wanted to convert to Christianity. And he said, what do you know about your own religion? I said, exactly. I don't know much and I think it's all rubbish. And he said, okay, maybe it makes sense that you have an informed opinion. Wait till you turn 18 and we shall see. In the meanwhile, he gave me a lot of books by Swami Vivekananda. And then subsequently, I did read a lot of J. Krishnamurti and Osho and anything that I could lay my hands on. And of course, thankfully, the desire to convert to Christianity got completely abandoned. And then for a while, because there were some of the things that I couldn't understand, especially Krishnamurti, because there is no use of pramana, there is no methodology that is being used, there is no unfolding in the way in which things were presented in the books. That I thought, okay, if I can't figure out God, then maybe I need to figure out human beings, and that's how I moved into psychology. Yeah, and I picked up the thread when I met Swami Brahmaprajnananda.
I see. And what age were you, like approximately? Were you in your early 20s?
I think about 24.
Okay, I see.
Yeah.
And then I suppose subsequently you decided when did it strike you that you wish to study Vedanta in depth and do the 3-year course? Is that what you did?
That's right. I went to Anikatti in 2000, and I knew that this was the life I wanted to adopt. I also knew I was not ready at that time because I had a very burning desire to work for social change, and I knew that I would get sucked into everything to do with social change. I mean, if anybody has dabbled in social work, one knows the kind of time, effort, and energy and perseverance it requires. And having spoken to a lot of brahmacharis, I also recognize that I would have liked to be in a position to financially contribute to the ashram and also be able to take care of living expenses. And coupled with all this, so I just prayed very earnestly to Dakshinamurti with tears streaming down my eyes that please, just make it possible for me to do a course. And and subsequently, I kept in touch with Puja Swamiji every year and attending his camps. And from time to time, every 6 months, I would have this existential crisis. Oh, when am I going to do the course, etc., etc. Of course, these are not things that I discussed with very many people except for Swami Brahmavidananda. And yeah, and soon enough, the decision to join the course happened.
I see. So that's wonderful to hear. Actually, I've also wished to do the course for a long time, but my duties do not allow me to take such a step at this point. But maybe someday.
You're anyway steeped in Vedanta, so it's fine.
I wish I
Yeah.
had more of your nishtha, but
Mm.
hopefully someday I'll get there. Swaminiji, I was also wondering if you could give us insight into the average day in the life of a person who's doing the 3-year course, and what are the things that you learn there? What are the experiences you have? What kind of food you eat, perhaps? Just an overarching picture of it all.
Right. So I can talk about the course in Anikatti. I'm sure that the other courses are designed in a similar format. I have never been so busy in my life as much as I was in the ashram. And this is I'm saying with keeping in mind the kind of professional roles I was doing. So um, so in terms of the schedule, most people will wake up by 4:30 and will go to the temple, and then subsequently followed by meditation. There are two Vedanta classes during the day. There is one Sanskrit class, and in the afternoon, for people who require assistance, there may be an additional Sanskrit class. There's also Vedic chanting, and in some courses, there has been the introduction of yoga. And in the evening, people either go for a walk or go to the temple, um, or use their time in the way they find it appropriate. And after dinner, there is satsang, and by pretty much 9:30, 10, lights are out. It's an extremely intensive schedule, and it requires tremendous clarity to be in a 3-year course. One would have taken care of, to make the most of the course, one would have taken care of most of their needs. What I mean by that is their need for affection, need for love and belonging, need to be connected to people, need for fun, need for power and achievement. One either would have grown out of most of this, or it would be at a minimum level, because the schedule is very, very intensive. And the beauty is that that's the only commitment. There is nothing else. So there is nothing else to distract you unless one chooses to be distracted. I was extremely fortunate to be a part of a very large community. Almost, I think we were, Pujya Swamiji called it the Janta course, because we were almost 85, 90, I think. This was, I think, a very unique course, the 2010 to 2013 course. And it was inspiring because of the people from different cultures, particularly the Japanese. I was absolutely amazed by their level of hard work and commitment, because they would sit with their Japanese to English dictionary and Sanskrit to, and it was great fun because Pujya Swamiji was doing all the text for us. So for us it was Swarga. I mean, at least for me, I can clearly say it was Swarga. After that I had no desire whatsoever to experience any kind of Swarga.
I see. So, you spoke about the internal qualifications that the sadhaka requires in order to undergo such an intensive course. But is there any screening done by the Gurukulam or the sannyasis and the swamis there themselves before they accept students?
I believe the screening has become more rigorous now, uh, which was done for the 2014 course. Before that, really the time that one spends while doing the 3 months, the Bhagavad Gita, the quick course that Pujya Swamiji took. Following that, I'm sure they have some criteria, and they also have an interview with the person. My case was slightly different because I joined the course a little late, a few months late. Um, I had asked Pujya Swamiji about joining the course, and fortunately or unfortunately for me, he said, you have the vision, you don't need a course. And at one level, I was very touched by what he said. At another level, I also felt a bit rejected. Like, if the whole world is able to do a course, why is Pujya Swamiji telling me to not do a course? Any which way, he said, you just come straight for the bhashya, you don't need to do all this. So I went for the bhashya, and then again I requested him, and then I joined the course. So my case was slightly different, but I believe that people look at, like the swamis, they definitely look at your level of adhikaritvam, and to the extent that one has fulfilled various responsibilities at whichever stage of life they are in, and primarily what is their level of mumukshutvam, because if that is there, everything else falls in place, or one works towards the other qualities of adhikaritvam.
I see. So, Swaminiji, how does perhaps at a personal level an individual can discern whether their pursuit to go to the ashram is born out of a quest for knowledge, or it is a form of escapism. So, as far
Yes.
as screening goes for a Swamiji who's a resident acharya there, how do they make that judgment?
Mhm.
Is there any way, any foolproof method to figure out, what the person's true intentions are, or whether they are truly qualified for such an undertaking?
Um, See, I'm sure they look at all this, all the various qualities of adhikaritvam, and primarily the mumukshutvam, like what is a desire for this? And everything is on a case-to-case basis. See, because we've also had couples studying in the Gurukulam. And also they look at nowadays what is their financial ability to contribute to the course as well as take care of themselves after the course. Yeah.
I see. So, you spoke about many foreigners also attending these courses.
Yes.
So, usually, since I believe most of the classes are conducted in English, right?
Yes.
So, how do they cope up with, say, learning Sanskrit? So, they'll probably need a dictionary for some of the English words, and then they'll need one for Sanskrit. So, it's a lot of effort.
Yes. Yes. And that is the one thing that we require tremendous prasada buddhi for, you know. So it's been a challenge for most of us um, while we were learning Sanskrit, and we were split into different groups depending on our level of proficiency or the lack of it. And yeah, every day was a struggle in terms of Sanskrit, because most of us were, I think, above 25 years, and the ability to memorize wasn't there as much. There were some people, of course, who were very good at it, and the foreigners particularly. There have been many conversations I've had with some of my friends who just wanted to give up because of Sanskrit. And one has to keep reminding oneself that it's just the means, that it just happens, that the commitment is to yourself and it's to Vedanta, it's not to Sanskrit. And by the default language happens to be Sanskrit, and therefore one also discovers a love for the language. And also discovers how there are no English equivalents for so many words. The more and more one seeps oneself with Sanskrit, because there's continuous exposure to it, one starts to appreciate its profoundness. Yes.
I see. So, in order to be a good teacher of Vedanta, is it necessary to have studied the Panini Sutras and related subject matters, or just a working understanding of Sanskrit as far as understanding Vedanta goes?
Okay, your voice is breaking, so I think what I've can you repeat what you said?
Oh, yes, sure. So, can you hear me now?
Yes, it's better. Yes.
Okay. So, in order to be a successful teacher of Vedanta, is it
Mhm.
necessary to have a deep understanding of the Panini Sutras and other related matters, or just a working knowledge of Sanskrit as far as understanding the Vedanta terminology is enough?
Um, I would think the bare minimum is to have working knowledge of Sanskrit. Uh, but then again, one will have to look at what is working knowledge of Sanskrit. So if one is able to read the Bhashya, uh, then I think we are in a good space. Uh, so just ignore the sound.
Yeah, yeah,
Somebody
that's
will
fine.
answer. Yeah. Um, Panini Sutras definitely help in terms of one's thoroughness, and if one wants to other more advanced texts, um, then certainly it helps. But for a teacher of Vedanta, i- as long as one is able to read the Bhashya and understand it by oneself, that's good enough. Yeah.
I see. Um, and also with regards to the study material there itself, are the texts that are taught standardized, or does it change from course to course depending upon the teacher? So, if you could maybe walk us through some of the core texts that you study over there.
Okay. Um, so what is referred to as the Prasthana Trayam? the Bhagavad Gita, along with the Bhashya we studied. So this is Adi Shankaracharya's Bhashya, commentary on the text, the verses. There is Pada Bhashya, there is like, commentary on the word, and there is Vakya Bhashya also, in terms of the structure of the sentence and what is the tatparya, what is the intended meaning. So Bhagavad Gita, then the major Upanishads, because Shankaracharya has written a commentary on them. Around the same time that the Upanishads are being studied, some basic texts, or what are called Prakarana Granthas, were also introduced. So amongst that, Tattva Bodha, we did also Shata Shloki, so many of them, Hasta Malikiyam, Advaita Makaranda towards the end, Atma Bodha, some bits of Viveka Chudamani. What else? Sadhana Panchakam. So all these are texts that are done during the course, and towards the end, the Brahma Sutras. So an analytical study, which can be undertaken only if one has done the Bhagavad Gita and the Upanishads, because it's trying to reconcile many of the seeming contradictions, and that is really the more than the icing on the cake. So that's towards the end of the course. Yes.
I see. So yeah, with regards to, as you mentioned, you do the Prasanatraya, and does this include the Bhashya on the Gita
Yes.
and the Upanishads as well, like Shankara Bhashya, or do you do other Bhashyas of other Acharyas also, like Swami Vidyaranya ji?
No, we with Vidyaranya we did Panchadashi, and yeah, we didn't do Anubhuti Prakasha, but we did Panchadashi, which was a beautiful text.
I see.
And no, we only stick to Shankaracharya's Bhashya, and as a part of the Brahma Sutra, there are few verses by Vidyaranya Muniji, which of course we studied. And we also do the Tika. We did the Tika with respect to Taittiriya as well as Brahma Sutra.
I see.
So Pujas must be quite selective about when and how he refers to the Tika. Even while doing Bhagavad Gita Bhashya, we did refer to Anandagiri Tika once in a way.
Okay. So, since you mentioned Pujya Swamiji, was he one of the resident acharyas when you were studying there?
He was the primary resident Acharya. That's why we were
Fortunate.
just happy, and we had this permanent grin on our faces most of the time, because he took pretty much all the texts for us. Uh, yeah, even the Prakarna Granthas, he took a lot of that for us. Yeah, almost all of them. And that's why most people who heard about the course kept saying how blessed we were, because we had
Absolutely.
him pretty much from start to finish. Yeah.
That's wonderful. And what year course was this?
This was 2010 to 2013.
Okay, I see. So, I
Yeah,
recall that he had just finished the Brahma Sutra in 2013 around November time.
that's
November,
right.
December.
Yeah, yeah.
Wonderful. So,
Yeah.
these courses that are there, for example, if you're studying Tattva Bodha and the Upanishad, so is it kind of like a classroom, college-based setting where you have different texts unfolded every day of the week, or is it like, you complete one text entirely and then you move on to the next one? Like, how do they divide the workload?
Yeah. Generally, we would have two texts being conducted at any given time. So when Swamiji started doing the Bhashya after the first year, it would be maybe the Bhagavad Gita Bhashya one class, and then the next class the same day would be an Upanishad Bhashya. So if he started with the Kathopanishad, then that's what he did. So two texts, and then until the text is completed, the text continues to be studied. In terms of a classroom setting, well, all of us, we yes, it is a classroom setting, and if we have any questions, we uh, we aim for the time during satsang. We would write it up, and Puja Swamiji would answer those questions. We were also very fortunate to have Swami Sakshat Kritananda as our residential acharya. So when Puja Swamiji was traveling, which was very rare during our course, he would take some of the texts for us, and he primarily taught us Sanskrit grammar. Yeah.
I see. So, that's as you've probably heard many times, that's very fortunate to have Pujya Swamiji teaching there for
Yes.
3 years, and you know, I wish I could share in on the same experience someday. And I also wanted to inquire that, once you began the course, the first day, is there some sort of an initiation phase where, maybe an orientation session where people, they introduce you to the thing? And also, is this studied every single day of the week, or are there a couple of days when you can maybe visit home if you have family?
Right. An orientation is certainly given in terms of what people can expect, also just in terms of the logistics. And the good thing is that expectations are not built up. In fact, they are totally downplayed. And so if people say, oh, this is going to be wonderful and brilliant and everything, so all that is downplayed. And the need for absorption and focus on the pursuit is highlighted a lot. Uh, the way we experienced the course, it was more like Monday to Saturday were classes, and when Puja Swami was there most of the time, so even Sundays we used to have classes. So in that sense, there was no time off, as we may understand in a professional setup,
Hmm.
and only Sanskrit class we wouldn't have on a Sunday.
I see.
And yeah, and in terms of visiting home, we used to have an annual break, 2 to 3 weeks a year, generally in August. So some people would choose to stay back, some people because Tamil Nadu is very much the land of absolutely magnificent temples. And some people would also visit home. So
I see.
people were in touch with their families. There were no rules as such in terms of you can talk to your family, you may not, because there was Wi-Fi. I mean,
Okay.
there still is Wi-Fi in the ashram, certain zones, and so people were free to do what they wanted to, and there were some people also who got distracted, but I
Exactly.
guess that happens in any setup.
Very true. So, once the course completes, um, is there
Yeah.
a final ceremony where Pujya Swamiji maybe gives a beautiful speech and inspires everybody to go out and become teachers? Is there some what is the process there?
Yeah. Um, see, around a month before the course got over, many of us were going to him looking for reasons to stay back. We didn't want to leave. And so he kept slipping in sentences about, I'm so fed up of you, please go, etc., etc. I want to see new faces now. 3 years I've seen the same faces, and things like that. So everybody was looking for another reason to stay on. Oh, Swamiji, I want to work on my nishtha, things like that. Or I have to study Sanskrit, maybe a little more. I'm not confident to teach, etc., etc. So a lot of people had these things, and he addressed a lot of things in throughout the. So really speaking, the valedictory ceremony to me began a month before. It was sort of spread over a month because he kept saying a lot of things to us before we left. And then a very beautiful valedictory ceremony. We were handed out our certificates, and there were performances. Some of us spoke about what it meant to be a part of such a course, and things like that. And so he likes to put a full stop to the course because
Yes.
there is a tendency for it to, yeah, perpetuate because of student insecurities.
No, I completely relate to that. It's good to have a closure at times. You know that you're supposed to move ahead and look on to new things.
Right.
So what were some of the so once everybody graduates from the course, is everyone qualified to become a teacher? Are they encouraged? Is everybody encouraged to teach, or are people selected as teachers?
I must add that before um we started to have interviews with Pujya Swamiji before we left. So these were one-on-one interviews where we shared, some of us shared our plans, some of us left it entirely to him as to what to do. And depending on everybody's pravritti, he has suggested several things. To some people, he suggested that they go back to a job, mostly people living in the West. To some people, he suggested that they could join Aim for Seva. To some, he suggested teaching. And one statement I remember very clearly, which he told us, was that it would be very wrong to not teach. And especially because you all have received a lot. At the same time, he also repeated what Krishna said to Arjuna in the last chapter. Uh, he says, that do what you wish. Um, so, it was like a simultaneous interplay of both these statements that he kept emphasizing. And are people qualified to teach? Well, if one looks at what we have been taught, then yes, we are qualified to teach. Again, the rider to that is the level of adhikaritvam with which one came to the course and what one has worked on, and also one's own communication abilities. There were some people who perhaps discovered the truth but may not have enough communication abilities. So it's not a one size fits all kind of principle that operates. Um, and also in the process of teaching, one also discovers what it means to be a teacher, because this teaching is very unlike any other teaching that one has done. And so yeah, I think some of us are teaching, the ones who graduated. I'm not sure about, I'm sure at least 50% are teaching. The first year, people would have, are still figuring out where they're going to be based, etc., etc. Yeah,
I see. So, it's interesting that you mentioned a lot of people are encouraged to find their own way, though they are also given the loaded statement that, it would be nice to teach as well. So,
yeah,
do most people who, before this is, do they come to the course with the intention to go back in their day-to-day lives, maybe start their, continue with their present job and just be enriched with more nishtha? Or, do many people come with the intention to become teachers eventually? So, what is the starting capital like? What were the thoughts?
yeah. Um, Most people, I would think about 50% would have come with the intention that they want to go back as teachers. A lot of them also came in just because they wanted to give themselves these 3 years and to study this, not knowing whether they will eventually end up teaching or will return to their jobs. Yes, that's how it is. Yeah,
I see. So from what you say, the input and the output looks more or less the same.
that's right. That's right.
So
Yeah, and also that, I at least personally for me, I think it's important to not have a preconceived idea before one comes for the course, because
mhm.
otherwise this pressure to be a guru, pressure to be a teacher can really impede one's ability to study. Because one will want to examine what is one's need for power and achievement in the context of being in the context of being able to teach. Can one be quiet and be on one's own uh, and just pursue this? Just gain one's own nishtha in it.
It's
So
very
there were two
true.
or three. who were in a hurry to be a guru. And so many times, a lot of their questions would come from, "Oh, how will this be presented to a student?" Things like that. And clearly, the person hasn't understood, but is only focused on the delivery of the material. And obviously, the person was then asked to focus more on one's own growth and one's own study.
So if I understand correctly, while you're at the Gurukulam, you're encouraged to be as good a student as you can, and then in the end, you can evaluate whether you want to teach or not.
That's right. That's right. There is no pressure to teach. I must say that there is no pressure to teach.
I
At
see.
the same time, I completely understand Pujya Swamiji's point when he says that teaching is a sadhana, and one looks at it that way. Um, so if I look at myself as a student of Vedanta, then it is my sadhana. So much like my own study of the Bhashya or any other text, teaching becomes my sadhana.
I see. So what are some of your, more, I'm sure all the experiences there are memorable, but some which really stand out in particular, your experiences with Pujya Swamiji over there.
A lot of them are very, personal and very funny. Like a lot of them, see, we used to laugh a lot during the course. I mean, obviously, because of Pujya Swamiji. And I had the opportunity to also make very deep when I went in for the course, I was not looking to make friends. I thought I will just be on my own. And so friendships happened, and it's very, some of these friendships are very unique because it's almost like childhood friends, because you're in this for the same thing, and one understands each other, because this pursuit, this mumukshatvam is so strong. So there's been a great connect, and also, people from different cultures. We used to celebrate a lot of festivals. So we celebrated Holi, some of us, and we used to also joke that, what's the most happening news? The cow delivered a calf. So things like that. So that was
Okay.
like our, you know the times of the ashram kind of news. So a lot of jokes like that we used to keep cracking about life in the ashram. Or there was a time when the elephants came, and they ate up all the jackfruits, and somebody attempted to offer water in a bucket to elephants because she was very compassionate, not knowing that he obviously got more provoked, and then some one or two trees got uprooted in the bargain. Um, just Swamiji's jokes, very topical jokes, as well as the ones that most of us have heard before. Um, or people trying to feed peacocks and then they refusing. Or it's also quite noisy to be in a forest. Most people don't realize this, but I mean, it's nice. It's nice. At the same time, it's also noisy because of a lot of the animals and the birds. Um, so a lot of us would also get together to do seva. So that again used to be a fun time, sweeping parts of the ashram or helping around in the dining hall. Um, People had their jokes about each other. Some people would have nicknames for each other. That sort of thing. Like it was like living in a hostel, but a different kind of a hostel. Yeah.
And as you mentioned, it's nestled with all this beautiful environment around. It's in the mountains, right? If I understand correctly.
Yeah, it's pretty much in the forest. Yeah.
Okay.
It's about 40 kilometers away from the city, the
Okay.
airport.
I just saw a couple of pictures and I see these hills behind. So is it a kind of a mountainous region?
Yes, yes, yes.
And I also heard of the infamous peacock. So that's
Ah,
interesting to know
yeah.
that.
Yeah, it's very nice to be able to feed them, with your own hands. Like, where would one be able to do that?
Are they that tame?
They are, they are.
Wow.
They're not, I mean, they respond. Yeah, they come and they, like, especially they like these khari biscuits, which I discovered. Yeah.
That's very interesting.
Yeah.
So, Swaminiji, once the course completed, What were your personal plans after completing the course?
Yeah. I discussed my plans with Puja Swamiji, and he encouraged me to return to Bombay and teach. And so I started to teach in a couple of months' time. I started. I had to go to. I had to go abroad. I was visiting my brother, and so I did that, and then soon after I started teaching. So I started, and I was very keen that I didn't want to go out and advertise very heavily, but I wanted to respond to requests, and that's what I did. So, so yeah, that's what I've been doing, and I did have some plans in terms of trying to figure out what would work with teenagers, children. So this 1 year I have spent, besides teaching, also thinking about what will work for people in Bombay. And as of now, I have my working conclusions are that one will stick to a traditional format. Workshops and stuff I used to do earlier, I can do the same thing with slightly different content. And so I'm taking it very slowly. And especially after sannyasa, I felt the need to withdraw a little bit because I have to also guard against my earlier orientation. See, I was very much,
Yes.
um, this productive orientation, as I call it, and the fact that that so every single day, my I felt like my day was not productive if I had not contributed to social change. So there was a very strong orientation. So therefore, one that one continues with Brihat Prasthanatraya, so study of other further texts, as well as teaching, and also I'm teaching Sanskrit and Vedic chanting. So again, responding to requests. So I'm going along with the plans that were suggested by Pujya Swamiji.
I see. So, if I gathered, immediately after you graduated from the course, did you also simultaneously pursue a professional career on the side?
No, I had see for me my sannyasa happened when I left to join the course
Okay,
because that's when I quit everything. Everything in the sense I resigned from my various roles and left what was familiar to me behind.
I see. And
Yeah.
when when did you take the decision, and what prompted the decision to take sannyas officially as such?
Yeah. See, for me, sannyasa is a uh, natural progression of my lifestyle. And I'm going to make a controversial statement. To me, sannyasa is inevitable. So I'm talking about for any uh, mumukshu, sannyasa is inevitable. Why I'm saying that is sannyasa, like jnanam eva tu lakshanam. There is nothing else besides jnanam, and that is how one looks at sannyasa. So we are looking at sarvakarma sannyasa. So all of us pretty much in terms of our lifestyle, maybe except for the couples who were in the ashram, we did live a life of sannyasa. An exclusive commitment to knowledge. No other commitments, no other distractions. And so for me, taking sannyasa was again a natural progression. It was sometime during the course, even before I joined the course, I knew that this was what I wanted to do. Pujya Swamiji knew about it. And during the course, when I asked him, uh, he said that, and these I hold these words very dear to me. He said, "I'll be very proud and happy to give you sannyasa. You deserve it." And and so soon after, because his health has been fragile, as you know, and if he had not been ill in February, then perhaps that would have been the time. But anyway, everything happens at the right time. And so this October, Diwali gift, a lifetime gift was given to some of us. Yeah.
This is always during Mahashivratri at Rishikesh?
Yes. But every month there is what is called Masa Shivratri, and so in October, the Masa Shivratri day, we were given sannyasa.
I see. And all the sannyasas are by Pujya Swamiji?
Um, so far, so far, uh, he's given sannyasa to I think more than 220 people
Okay.
over 30 years, and that was one thing that I wanted, and I mentioned to Swamiji that Swamiji, if there is one raga, if I can call it raga, is that I really want sannyasa only from you, because to me, he has given me everything, even the teaching even the teaching by Swami Brahmaprajnananda, whom I deeply respect, uh, has also been from Puja Swamiji.
Right.
And so this last, this liberation out of samsara, so to speak, best done by Puja Swamiji, at least for me. And so that's how it happened.
That's wonderful. So you mentioned that sannyasa is inevitable. So here, are
Yes.
you referring to Bahya sannyasa or the inner sannyasa?
Um, I prefer to not make these distinctions of inner and outer, because it is knowledge. There's no ways about it. Depending on, again, one's age and stage of life, one chooses a certain lifestyle. Uh, and so that's how it has to be understood. That's how Shankara has repeatedly said it in all the bhashya. And then all these other things, they just drop. Then even the desire for this, what is called bahya sannyasa, also drops. And it's ideal to take sannyasa when one no longer has a burning desire for it. When one
Okay.
sees that, yes, it's a lifestyle and it's a culmination and perhaps a validation of the tradition, but it cannot add much more to who I am already.
So Swamini, I'm trying to understand that statement. You said
Yes.
that even the desire, the raga for sannyasa has to drop, and that is the ideal time to take sannyasa. So if such
Yeah.
were the case, then what would prompt a person to take sannyasa as opposed to carry on with a regular lifestyle?
See, sannyasa to me, at least to me, it's a progression, and it's a natural progression of the lifestyle that I was already leading for the last 4 years. From the time in the ashram and then returning from the ashram and teaching. And so one need not take sannyasa also. As long as the commitment to knowledge is there and there is no other commitment, commitment to knowledge in terms of learning and teaching is there, it's not necessary. For me, I thought it was, I wanted to receive it from Puja Swamiji, and it was for me a culmination of also a validation of the tradition. And there are some very, very beautiful rituals which are a part of the sannyasa ceremony that I thought would be helpful for my nishtha as well. Yeah,
Could you please tell us more about those rituals and the ceremony in general?
yeah. Right. Um, there are three main parts to the ritual. One is what is called Ashta Shraddha. So so the main thing is that one is giving up karma. I mean, that's the basic principle behind sannyasa. Also in link with the Vaidika lifestyle. And hence, uh, a major part of Vaidika karma is being able to do Shraddha. To be able to do Shraddha, I mean, one is actually giving up, one is in that sense giving relationships. One also gives up one's own relationship to one's parents, along with Pitras, Divya, etc., etc. And the uniqueness about the first part of the ceremony is also what is called Atma Shraddha, that I give up my sense of identification with this mind body complex. And so that was a very profound ceremony, to be able to do one's own Shraddha, that because I have no dependence, nobody need I mean, nobody need do my shraddha, after the body falls. Then there is a lot of Gayatri Japa that we do, and we stoke the fire. It doesn't, we don't allow it to die at all. So that's done the entire night. A lot of Gayatri Japa. And then in early morning, we did what is the Viraja Homa. So this is a Homa which further purifies and again involves us offering everything, our karmendriya, jnanendriya, etc., etc. They say that when the Viraja Homa is done, no, person from any other ashrama should not be there, because the person may get sudden vairagya and also may want to take up sannyasa. So they say that the earth shakes when people do Viraja Homa. So we stand very purified, and this is our last relationship manifestation with Agni, that I have nothing more to gain from Agni. I don't desire any more bhoga, aishwarya, anything basically. I mean, what to say of any gain when one has given up one's own relationship with the mind body? Uh, Basically, all these rituals contributing to this mithyatva nishchaya, really, but still they are nice contributions. And then we are ready for our dip in the Ganga. Puja Swamiji comes in the morning, early morning, and of course he was very enthusiastic and very ready, much before time, before we could actually go. And then he gives us our Upadesha, um, which again is he was very moved this time, and it's very rare, to see tears in his eyes. But like he was also saying that, it's such an important, such a profound ceremony. So yeah, so he gives us the Upadesha, then we go have a dip, and because now we are nameless entities, so then we have to be given a name. So we come back, and then he gives us our orange robes, as well as the name, and he also gives us the sannyasa mantra. Um, so things like that, yeah.
Swamini ji, how are the names selected? I was always curious to know.
Yeah. Um, Generally, there is another Swami who has who has all the other names, about whatever 200 odd names that person has that list. It's generally left to Puja Swamiji. So he looks at the person, and he will, something that either it either represents a person, or it is a name that the person has to live up to. Both instances apply, and yeah, and then he may give one or two names, but if they are already taken in the list, then he will think some more. Uh, and of course, he looks at you for some time, and then he gives the name. And his sweetness is that he also checks with you if you're okay with the name. So it was really funny. Yeah.
I see. So you also mentioned the Upadesha. Could you tell us what Upadesha is?
Yeah. So see, this is all, the rituals are all for Vividisha Sannyasa. Vividisha Sannyasa as in the one who takes to this pursuit to want to know the truth. And hence, it is the same Upadesha that he has taught us day in and day out, through the various Upanishads. But because the nature of the rituals is such that I am taking this lifestyle because I want knowledge, and so therefore he gives a certain he teaches us either a Mahavakya, or he basically talk about Aikyam. He will talk about the oneness between Jiva and Ishvara. Yeah.
I see. You mentioned one of the types of sannyasas. Could you tell us more about the other types?
Yeah, there is only what is called Vividisha Sannyasa and Vidvat Sannyasa. So this I'm very clearly talking only about lifestyle. Like I said earlier, sannyasa is purely jnanam, nothing else. Vidvat sannyasa is sannyasa where you take sannyasa only to validate the tradition. You already know the truth, and so the sannyasa lifestyle is not necessarily to know the truth. It's a confirmation, it's a validation of the truth. So also in response to your earlier question, then why take sannyasa? It's not necessary. If it is vidvat sannyasa, you may still take it. There are a lot of vidvat sannyasis also now who may not have taken on the ropes, but they know the truth. And that's what we want to focus on. Because there is a lot of adhyasa, there is a lot of superimposition also placed on people who are sannyasis. And what sannyasa is and everything. And it's important to do little adhyaropa apvada here. Recognize that it's an important lifestyle. We revere the lifestyle and the courage that some people are able to do it. At the same time, we don't lose sight of the goal, which is moksha.
I see. So, so far I've asked about what kind of person should take sannyasa, but maybe you
Yes.
could shed some light, on who are the people who should not take sannyasa, though they may think that it's the right path for them. Because I know many instances, even in different traditions, where people have actually become sannyasis and they've come back disillusioned about life. So,
Um, People who haven't resolved their need for uh, need for love and belonging. If it's very high, need for sexual desire. If again that's very high, can't be managed. Again, need for power and achievement, because all of this the hijacks everything else. So so some people may choose to be very entangled or get related to other people. So sannyasis. So we have heard of enough instances like that, where the need has not been managed, it has not been mastered, or one become. There are some people who become a sannyasi because they enjoy the respect uh, or the reverence. But the respect and reverence is really for the robes. It may be to the person, it may not necessarily be to the person, and one has to separate that. So yes, so or the person is interested in everything else but Shastra. So then, it's just pointless. Yeah.
I see. So, I can't think of any questions on the subject of sannyasa as such because you shed so much light on the process, and this is something I wanted to know for a long while, and I'm
Yes.
sure a lot of people who will also be watching this would like to know these things. I thought maybe I could discuss the subject of Pujya Swamiji teaching in a particular manner because he's one of the few rare people who take Shastra as a pramana, and this I think understanding was not very popular before Pujya Swamiji taught.
That, that's
So,
right.
maybe if you could tell us a little bit about what classifies Pujya Swamiji as that distinguished and rare teacher of Vedanta today, as opposed to like a neo Vedanta or modern Vedanta teacher.
Yeah. Um, See, for me, Puja Swamiji is Dakshinamurti. And having said that, I also see, I've heard many other Mahatmas in Rishikesh, other places, and what you say about how he uses the pramana is absolutely unmistakable, unbeatable, and that is what delivers ultimately. So his emphasis time and again about looking on upon Vedanta as a pramana is really what makes all the difference. And so Ben, because he says that it has to be looked upon as a pramana, there's no other way, then his teaching is, and the way he unfolds the pramana is again very, very unique only to him. I have heard many other Mahatmas who 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 give you concepts, who in fact promote a certain objectification of the Mahavakya. Whereas Pujya Swamiji doesn't do that. He makes you see what he sees. And that is his uniqueness. Again, the power of the pramana is such that despite one's levels of adhikaritvam, one could be a real manda adhikari, but the pramana just goes home. And that is again the power of pramana, because everybody who sits in his classes or even public talks, just the level of adhikaritvam is a huge range. And still everybody is able to get insights. That only talks about his greatness, and of course he will attribute his greatness to the greatness of the Shastra and the greatness of his gurus. So, as much as it is his humility, as it is also the greatness of our parampara. So that I think is one very, very unique thing in the way in which he teaches. He doesn't lose an opportunity to unfold, which again I think is very unique. There are a lot of teachers who provide bullet point teaching. They will put things in categories, and so one may have the illusion that one knows, but it's really only familiarity with concepts. And so because that anxiety is there, oh, I want to know, and then some concepts are presented and one can delude oneself into thinking that one knows, but it's only familiarity that one knows. One doesn't necessarily know. And so Pujya Swamiji does away with all of that, because every opportunity for unfolding, he will unfold the Aikyam. The second thing is of course, everybody does Tatpada Vichara. Still, his emphasis on Ishvara in one's life, time and again, day in and day out, he emphasizes and highlights and really, really rams it home. I haven't again heard other Mahatmas speak in the way that Pujya Swamiji does. I think these are the two main things. There are a few smaller technical points, again in the way in which he looks at Chamakam. See, most people will say, oh, this is all for me. Whereas he says, hey, this is my glory. Because he presents the May as Shashti. So then, so what better prayer than talking about my own glories, in the understanding uh, of myself. So these are all smaller technical points that, are his sort of contributions, one could call it, to the way in which the parampara carries on and Brahma Vidya is taught.
That is very true, and based on what you say, the Chamakam can appeal to any seeker. If a person actually requires the comfort and the material objects of desire within the prayer, then they can pray for it as an external object that they wish for, and then if they have reached that certain level, then they can look at it as their own glory, as you say. So I'm always amazed when I look at Shastra that it has something for all gradations of seekers, all levels.
Yes.
One more, very interesting thing that I found in Pujya Swamiji's teaching, apart from what you mentioned, is he's very firm about not translating certain words. They have no equivalent in English. For example, Atma being soul and Ishvara being God. And repeatedly, a lot of people that I always interact with, they continue creating these errors. So I was wondering if you could maybe share some light on that as well.
Yeah. That what I was referring to earlier, there is a certain beauty in the Sanskrit language, and also just a recognition that there are some words that are born of a culture, and they influence the culture as much as they are a product of the same culture. And therefore, it's not about truly there aren't any equivalents, because certain words are born of certain cultures. And so, in the way in which Pujya Swamiji uses words to foreign audiences, and his commitment to teaching, his commitment to clarity is evident, because he says, I will use a word and I will explain the word. So he will stick to using the Sanskrit word and he will explain it so that the it's only the meaning that rests with you. You know, the word may drop off, it's the meaning that rests with you. And that again, you know, in given the state of Hindu Dharma currently, his emphasis on the way in which certain things need to be and subsequent causes that he has taken up are huge. And I'm sure that, you know, 15, 20 years down the line, many people will be able to see the kind of contribution that he made. Maybe it's not so evident now because he also downplays a lot of this work. Another thing that I think is very, very unique about Pujya Swamiji is he barely uses the word should and should not. And he recognizes that learning needs to happen in a mind that is relaxed and contemplative. And you know, when you listen to him, immediately the atmosphere is imbued with, of course, a lot of people can talk about his presence, his vibrations, his energy, etc. Keeping that aside for a moment, he does not by any standard induce any kind of fear or guilt in the listener. There are many Mahatmas who say ye hona chahiye, wo hona chahiye, shraddha nahi hai, work more on your adhikaritvam. So they will put the sadhaka on a guilt trip, and Swamiji never ever does that, irrespective of one's adhikaritvam. So that again I think is very, very unique. And because of his exposure to science and psychology, he also intertwines it very beautifully in his talks.
Swamini ji, I understand from your perspective that you are you have the background of psychology, but I was always curious to know how did Pujya Swamiji become familiar with these subjects? Because as you mentioned, he does talk a lot about science and psychology in his lectures. So how did he
Yeah,
come across these topics?
yeah. I think um, when he first came to the West, when he was trying to complete that course in Piercy and then subsequently in Sailorsburg, when he started doing the courses, he came in touch with a lot of students, Westerners, and he did say that some of them required a lot of handling the mind. It also happened that one or two of his students went on to study psychology and get doctorates, and he had a lot of conversations with them. I'm told that there were a few psychologists also who came to him to talk through certain concepts and talk about how Vedanta goes beyond those concepts. So I believe all of this contributed to all the work that he speaks about in the context of the unconscious, or even for that matter, um, you know, how he has zeroed in on the fundamental problem of this fear and of guilt and hurt. So this, of course, is how Pujya Swamiji, he has a very unique capacity to present things in a much more simpler fashion uh, as compared to the psychologists who would have gone to him, you know, talking about all these concepts in the first place.
I see. Are one of the psychologists you refer to Radhaji?
Yes, yes.
Okay, I see. I have one of her books actually, The Jungian Myth and Advaita Vedanta. I haven't read it yet, but it's there in
Okay.
the list.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah, it's quite nice. Yeah.
I see. There's also very interesting transcript of her conversations with Pujya Swamiji where she's asking
Mhm.
questions and it's almost 350 pages. It's a delight to read that because they are high level questions. So
That's right.
that's when you really see that Pujya Swamiji is his profound depth in this Shastra. So
Yes.
so Swamiji, coming to the present, what are you currently teaching? Which courses are you teaching and where are you teaching them?
I'm teaching the Bhagavad Gita in two locations. I'm following the traditional format, uh, which is like verse and then unfolding. The locations are Andheri West and Borivali. These are two places in Bombay. Other than that, I teach Sanskrit to a group of students who are studying Vedanta from my teacher in Bombay, Swami Brahmaprajnananda. and I also teach Vedic chanting to another group. Prior to this, I did teach like the key topics of the second chapter to another third group somewhere else. Yeah. And along with that, I continue my Brihat Prasthana uh, studies as well. Yeah. So
I see.
I study with Swami Brahmaprajnananda.
I see. And the Gita that you're unfolding, is it with Bhashya?
I keep the Bhashya in mind, but because most of them don't know Sanskrit, I don't read the Bhashya in front of them. Uh, but yeah, in my unfolding, I will bring that in.
I see. So if complete newcomers of Vedanta want to attend your courses, they would feel at ease with regards to the level of teachings that you're unfolding at this point.
I would think so. I
Okay,
would think, and from what students tell me, I believe so.
I see.
Yeah.
So, I would definitely, since I'm also from Bombay and I've lived there for most of my life, I have a lot of friends over there who might be interested. But,
Okay.
as you spoke about these times, very few people, though there is interest, it may not be a high priority for people yet. So maybe the Adhikata maybe that may not be there. So,
Yeah.
it's a good,
Also that in Bombay, particularly now, I think because of this convenience of online shopping, everybody wants everything to be very, very convenient, including coming for a class. And everybody is looking for, these bites. And they wish that Vedanta would just be an app and it would be really simple. So there has to be a lot of education, I feel, about what it is and how different it is and why it's not an experience and things like that before one actually delves into a text. So if there is a group, I would prefer to do some introductory talks and then determine the level of interest, if at all, to take it further, or we can focus on psychological growth, and that also is a big takeaway.
I see. So apart from Vedanta, you still continue to teach psychology?
That's right. Yeah.
I recently read that,
Yeah, it's in response to the university asking me to come and teach. And since I did that for more than 10 years, I'm happy to do that because, again, it's like a small contribution to society. Because I would want psychologists to do their job well, honestly.
I
And
see.
there's a lot to learn, and I'm hoping that in time I can do a course in helping psychologists understand a little bit of the Indian scriptures enough for their so that they may be better at what they do.
I see. So since you've taught before, the official sannyasa, now I say official because you said it was a progression. But
Yes.
what is the difference in reception of the individuals that you teach today as far as college goes? Because they're not expecting, they're not there to study Vedanta per se, but now they see a sannyasi like you coming and teaching. So how is that different from what it used to be earlier?
Yeah, they don't know what to make of it, honestly. Okay, and so I don't highlight my sannyasa, nor do I downplay it. This is how it is, and I focus on the subject matter. I did wonder, how the Muslims and the Christians in the audience would receive it, and I did share with the professors that I'm sure that if a nun would have come to teach, uh, people would have been okay about it. But given the pseudo secularism, uh, I did have my concerns, and I did tell the university I'm happy to not come if it disturbs anybody. And they insisted that I come, and I was happy that I went because people didn't have any issues, and I was happy to also see that some of the Muslims and the Christians, they had a few questions about Vedanta, which was sort of different from psychology, which of course I was very happy to talk about.
The subject of pseudo-secularism would require an entire discussion, but
Yes.
maybe we can have some more insights on that as well. But this has been very helpful to me. I'm sure it's going to be helpful to people watching. And
Thank
once again, I appreciate all your wisdom and the experiences that you shared with us because it was for the first time that I got an in-depth picture of what it is like to live at a Gurukulam. What are the the various thoughts in a person's mind before they choose to take up such a path in life.
Right.
And definitely, some of the misconceptions were removed from my own mind today. So, I'm
Wonderful.
very grateful for that. And maybe we'll have one more conversation like this, and you can teach us more.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you, Prashant. Thank
Thank
you.
you so much, Swamiji. Pranam.
Yeah. Thank you.
So,